Hey guys, Prometheus back here yet again with you for episode 3 of Risk, Reward, and Fire. It's great to be here with you guys on this amazing day, and we have some things to talk about. We just had the Genius Act and Clarity Act pass by the House. Two very key milestones for our sector, and I think are going to potentially play a big role in the future of crypto. And we are going to talk about how we're going to navigate those individual bills that were passed and really how they're going to affect crypto moving forward and what we should be looking at. I would appreciate if you liked, subscribed, and commented on the video. And let's get back into things. All right, guys. So to start things out, we're looking at Chainlink. Yes, Chainlink, probably not what you think I'll be pulling up today for episode 3, but I think it is very important that we look at some of these charts that may have fallen to the wayside or are not necessarily in favor with a lot of the current participants' mindset or viewpoint on the markets. But I am here to tell you that this is probably going to be an absolute cooker as we start to move forward. So let's dive on into it. I want to break down some market structure, and I want to break down why the bills that were just passed are going to be key for the legitimization of our sector here in crypto, and why potentially some of these dino coins could be getting a super strong bid. So let's dive on into it. So here I have the Chainlink weekly chart pulled up for you guys, and like the market, or like the title site suggests, we are going to be looking at market structure, and this is something that on a zoomed out high time frame perspective is going to be very important to ignore a lot of the noise in the market and to allow us to position into some plays that are, in my opinion, surefire bets in any high time frame long-term portfolio in regards to crypto proxy, crypto beta, and crypto proxies. So let's dive on in. Like I said, we have Chainlink up here, and I had mentioned that what we are wanting to look at is our high time frame structure, guys. The reason why I want to talk about high time frame structure is a lot of people are getting a little chopped up on the lower time frames, and we really want to zoom out. So again, we look here at Chainlink. We had a really nice bottom form here over the majority of 22 to 23. This is our high time frame lows. We were in bearish market structure, and then we had a really nice breakout, right? We are now setting higher highs and higher lows, indicative of a bullish trend to the upside. And ultimately speaking, if we look at Chainlink specifically, I think this is a chart that's really going to blow a lot of people out of the water. So, if we look back here to our most recent low put in back in June on Chainlink, you can clearly see stated by the trend lines that I just did pull off of this chart in particular, we are in bullish market structure, guys. And this is something I really like to look at, especially if there's a lot of noise on the timelines, if things are a little choppy on the lower time frames, like we've seen the past couple of days. I like to go out on the zero time frames. I like to zoom out, get a little bit more clarity in market direction and kind of where we're headed. So like I said, this is our current market structure, right? We put in a really significant, beautiful base over, the majority of, for about half of 22 and the first half of 23. And then saw a really nice move off those lows, guys. And this, was a confirmed break back to bullish market structure once we were able to break that previous shoulder high. And then, zooming out, we have done nothing but we've been doing nothing but really in the steady uptrend ever since then. Sure, we've had some pretty significant pullbacks along the ways, but that's crypto, and that's just piece of the pie, and that's part of the game. But ultimately speaking, this looks really good, and I think what we're currently seeing is very much indicative of what we saw actually back in 24, before we saw our significant leg up leading into October and November, and setting our high time frame high. Now you are probably asking me, well, why, where are we targeting? What are we looking for here? Why wouldn't I just go on chain and bid something that's going to pump 1,000%? And the reason being is I think there's really clear risk to reward to the upside. That's, it's very defined, and it's a position that I believe is going to help, in any long-term high time frame portfolio in perspective to really securing some nice realized upside as we start to move forward. Like I said, with the legitimization that we've seen from the two most recent bills that were passed. So we look back to kind of our move off the lows. Again, market structure broke back to bullish. We came back down. We set a higher low. Our trend is now set if we pull the trend line off these two lows, and we've been respecting it even since the pullback that we saw at the beginning of this year, and then the pullback that we saw towards the beginning to the end of May to the beginning of June. And to me, that's very important. That's indicative that our overall direction is to the upside in this chart specifically. And if history is any indication of anything, as we zoom out here, we look at Chainlink, right? The move that we had from the end of 23, really to the move to the end or middle of 24, excuse me. We were then in a high time frame downtrend or a mid time frame downtrend, excuse me, and we were able to put in a nice basing structure, and you actually started to see, if we look here, this was a really, really nice basing structure where we saw compression in price, similar to what we saw off our most recent lows. Again, we pull a trend line from the highs down, and we were respecting it up until we had that break actually last week, and we had a really beautiful break of our descending trend line on Chainlink. And I do believe that, like I said, with the bills that were just passed, Chainlink is going to be one of those plays that is going to potentially catch a lot of people off guard, right? A lot of these older names of the previous cycles have potentially fallen to the wayside, but I don't think they're really ones that you should be forgetting, because as we know, the narrative and the mindset behind previous cycles was very much tech driven, and it's something that we've gotten away from a little bit this cycle, but that's really nothing to be worried about. And as we start to move forward into what I believe to be more tech driven, more fundamentally driven narratives, as from a price appreciation standpoint and what really drives price, Chainlink's going to be one of those names that benefits from that. So we're seeing, we got the compression, we got the break of the trend line, but we respected our high time frame ascending trend line. And you ask me, okay, where are we headed next? Well, if we pull some fibs on Chainlink in particular from the highs to the lows of our previous, downtrend into the wedge and the price compression, you can see we came up right into our 1618 at $30. And so again, this is kind of indicates to me that Chainlink does like to respect fib extensions. And so if we pull a fib extension off of our, from our previous high to our, our previous higher low, we are looking at almost $40. And so if I look at this, right, I understand I zoomed out high time frame perspective that ultimately speaking, this chart is going much, much, much higher. And I think this has a great place in any long-term high time frame portfolio for somebody that's wanting something that's a little bit more safe, right? Something that isn't necessarily going to see as much drawdown as potentially some of the lower market cap, higher beta names in the sector, but ultimately speaking is going to give you really, really, really nice reward to the upside or asymmetric risk to the upside. So Chainlink is one of those names. And I think Chainlink, alongside some of the other names that we're about to show you, are names that are kind of tipping us off to where the market is headed next, right? We talk about what are our risk on barometers, what are the names that are giving us signal in the market in regards to the next direction that we're really going to be headed. And I think Chainlink is one of those. I look at this chart and somebody asked me, are you worried about, potentially high time frame top here and us not seeing a rotation into altcoins? And I just showed you, like, a lot of these dino coins and a lot of these tickers, these quote unquote dino coins or safer plays are in an actual high time frame uptrend. And to me, this leads me to believe that we're actually in the beginning of our third drive higher. And if you listened in and tuned into the last two previous episodes, we talked a lot about timing. And if you remember, I talked about Bitcoin being in price discovery, and getting confirmation of that then allows us to understand that altcoins are up next. And I do believe that altcoins, alongside, again, Chainlink and some of the other charts that I'm going to show you, are tipping us towards, altcoins are about to fly. So something to be very cognizant of. Again, I look at RSI here on the weekly. Look at the RSI on the weekly here, guys, just starting to uninvert and really start to perk up. And there's a ton of room to the upside, in my opinion, on Chainlink. And this is a no-brainer play, especially as we start to move forward. In the Discord, we actually called this out. I think it was a week and a half ago, off the top of my head. I called it out in my channel, and we, longed the break of the trend line, and we are able to capture some really nice upside so far. But our high time frame targets are much, much, much higher. So really awesome play that we've captured in the Discord so far, and I think this is going to continue to be a cooker. But like I said, when altcoin charts look like this and are in high time frame uptrend since their bear market lows, you really got to ask yourself, do we think that altcoins are, do we think that Bitcoin and ETH and Solana are about to pull back, back to their April lows when we have structure forming like this on altcoins? I don't think so, guys. I think that altcoins are actually gearing up and showing us that they're ready to go. They're ready to send alongside some of the charts that we showed in the previous two episodes. So let me show you guys another chart that I've been looking at that's kind of in confluence and very similar to what we saw out of Chainlink, and it is Doge. Doge is this other chart that looks very, very similar to Chainlink. Again, market structure. Pay attention to market structure, right? We base out in 23, and now we're starting to set higher highs and higher lows. Breaking above this high then confirms we're back in bullish market structure. And again, higher low marginally, but still a higher low. And Doge is now, in my opinion, doing something very, very similar to Chainlink. You look at RSI on the weekly, just starting to uninvert. We have descending trend lines similar to what we saw, again, off of our mid time frame compressions previously seen in the cycle during our quote unquote mini alt seasons. Very, very similar. These charts are very, very, very similar, or this price action is very similar to what we've seen previously in the cycle, right? We had mid time frame downtrend into a higher low formed, right? We see some form of, expansion off the lows with a supply region, very, very similar. Come back down, sweep the liquidity, price starts to compress. Where are we headed next? We might see a little bit of a, sticking point here on Doge at 25 cents, but ultimately speaking, again, zoomed out on a high time frame perspective, our high time frame area, in confluence with the RSI and the weekly, with the charts we talked about in the previous two episodes, we're targeting our next high time frame supply region, which is going to be, our 2021 highs. So something that I'm keeping my eye on. Again, this is why structure is so important. When the noise gets super, super loud, especially on the timeline, and you aren't sure, where's price headed next? What are we really looking for in regards to, directionality in altcoins and even in BTC? Well, find the structure. We understand we're in bullish market structure, and if Bitcoin is in price discovery, giving us that confirmation, we see that this is just gearing up and is starting to put in almost a ramp, and you would expect a large expansionary phase here out of, Chainlink, Doge, and some of these other charts. So that's kind of what I'm looking at in the market. Again, this is just to give you guys perspective. It's very easy to get wrapped up on the lower time frames, listening to certain people tell you that, we got to head in a certain direction. Well, we don't have to head in a certain direction, but looking at these charts based off of likelihood, I would beg to differ, and I would argue that we are actually going to see, not only Bitcoin head higher, but also altcoins. So structure is bullish. Structure remains bullish. We're just starting to see a breakout across the board on many of these major Dino coins and altcoins, alongside a major mover in the market being XRP. And XRP seeing a strong underlying bid is very, very, very important for the rest of the crypto sector, because XRP is such a pivotal name. And again, that legitimization piece, right? Seeing, big institutions and seeing, quote unquote smart money bid ETH and XRP, expecting not only ETFs, but regulation coming down the pipeline. You'd expect that signals a flood of liquidity into altcoins and the rest of the crypto sector. And something we've not seen this cycle so far. We've only really seen the underlying institutional bid in Bitcoin, and our altcoin bags have not necessarily been able to benefit as much. And the structural shift in that structural dynamic, or that dynamic change, is going to be huge, guys. And I'm super, super stoked for it. So again, these charts are in bullish market structure. The similarities that we've seen previously in the cycle are too similar. In confluence with RSI on the weekly, Bitcoin and price discovery, institutions bidding, regulations, things are getting passed. Guys, we're only just getting started, and I'm super, super excited for what we have next. So with that being said, if you have any questions, feel free to leave some comments in the comment section down below. Like, subscribe. We'll see you guys next week for round number 4 on risk, reward, and fire. As always, take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, guys.